So tell me about how and why you started your company and how you settled on your brand name.
Sometimes we make deliberately good choices. Sometimes it's serendipitous. In my case, and how I got introduced to private equity traces back to GE Capital.
Okay.
I noticed that 3/5 of our projects were private equity portfolio companies. And it happened to be a very fascinating era as the industry was transitioning from financial engineering to proactive value creation, like operationally oriented execution. And you couldn't ask for better. And it evolved into an opportunity to cross the transom and be in a private equity firm. And here I pop up at the right place in the right time. And this business started in 2006. So I essentially said, whoa, there's a consulting practice here. And I can offer this more broadly because the industry was still evolving in how they wanted to brand their version of this type of thing. When you find something you love doing, you'll never work another day in your life.
Right.
And I haven't worked since 2006 when we started this, but I put in a lot of hours playing. And I just have a delight working with people in the trenches to figure stuff out.
Welcome to the Turbo Branding Show, where we help you ignite your growth by leveraging your brand to grow faster, easier, and more successfully. You'll discover insightful conversations from our powerful guests, founders, CEOs, and advisors for thriving businesses who are sharing how they have successfully built strong brands to help you expand and grow. I'm your host, Sue Kirshner, and today we're welcoming John Lanier to the show. So let's delve into today's episode and turbocharge your brand. First, I want to thank you for being here, John. I'm really excited that you're here.
It's my pleasure. I'm looking forward to this.
Excellent. I'm excited to have you on to talk about your brand and the essential role the brand plays in a company's growth strategy. But first, let me start by introducing John to you all. So John Lanier excels at sharing profit rainmaking super trends, which enables companies to go up against Goliaths and win. And he's a popular speaker with his highly effective program, Profit Rainmaking, 7 Universal Truths to Loyal Customers, Exceptional Operations, and Inspired Teams. But John is the CEO and founder of Middle Market Methods, which is a powerful consulting firm founded in 2006, which works to dramatically reduce execution risk and double companies between $25 to $250 million in sales. And he is known as a resultant, as his clients have called. I'm having a problem this morning.
It's Monday.
He is known as a resultant, as his clients have coined, which I absolutely love that term. We'll talk about that in a second. But more importantly, I want to tell you his second book, Profit Rainmaking, is due out next year. So welcome. And did I miss anything you want me to share there?
No, I appreciate the plug for the book. It's quite an endeavor.
I bet. So, well, wonderful. Well, all right, let's dig in and talk about the role of the brand in helping companies grow and increase their value. So, but first I want to start out with the unique way that you position yourself and your company, which helps you stand out amongst other consultants who help companies grow. So tell me about how and why you started your company and how you settled on your brand name.
Sometimes we make deliberately good choices. Sometimes it's serendipitous. In my case, and how I got introduced to private equity traces back to GE Capital.
Okay.
And there was this marketing initiative that was intended to differentiate in an otherwise commoditized business, which was lending money.
Okay.
It's all green. It has an interest rate, has similar structure. And in that era, the Jack Welch era, we enjoyed the clout as, quote, the world's most admired company. And I actually learned super duper marketing when I was at GE Capital. And that is sort of funny because I'd been involved in business development for about 20 years before that.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing a strategy be incubated and executed, I had a front row seat in this. And the whole idea was to offer our tools and best practices if people would do business with us.
Okay.
That's quite a hook.
Mm-hmm.
And along with that, I had the pleasure, the honor of being one of the first four people to go to market to do this stuff. So I was doing projects all over the place. All of us were.
Okay.
And I noticed something because I refer to myself as a pound puppy. I've had so many experiences, you can't get papers on me. I guess, have to be a little older to appreciate what a pound puppy is, but
Yes.
let's call me a junkyard dog. In any event, I noticed that three-fifths of our projects were private equity portfolio companies. And it happened to be a very fascinating era as the industry was transitioning from financial engineering to proactive value creation, like
Mm.
operationally oriented execution. And my God, I had the privilege of being in the world's most admired company at the time with a toolbox that was completely awesome, using it to help businesses that helped my company do more business. You couldn't ask for better. And it evolved into an opportunity to cross the transom and be in a private equity firm, which was coincidentally pondering, how do we do this?
Mm.
And here I pop up at the right place in the right time, and here we talk. And that started in 2002. And this business started in 2006. So I essentially said, whoa, there's a consulting practice here. And I can offer this more broadly because the industry was still evolving and how they wanted to brand their version of this type of thing.
Okay.
And I found that how I went about it was more suited to my particular style and taste about in and out. And I could touch more people. And it had some interesting manifestations that are part of branding. And that is when you see a lot of variety and you're a problem solver, a profit rainmaking solutions provider, we may come back to that one.
Okay.
When you see a lot of variety, one of the really seriously cool things is when you see something in one industry vertical that could cross pollinate to another industry vertical, but nobody's had the temerity to ask, would this work here?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And those are Kodak moments. Those are just awesome moments. And look, if nothing else comes across in our visit today, I love this stuff. I absolutely love this stuff.
Yeah.
I can wake up for no particular reason in the wee hours of the morning with an idea to play with, and off I go. Like this morning, it started at 2:30.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So this is actually getting close to dinner time for me.
That's
And then I'll
right.
start another day job. But
Yeah.
when you're passionate, a couple of things happen. One, and this also I know you've heard, when you find something you love doing, you'll never work another day in your life.
Right.
And I haven't worked since 2006 when we started
Okay.
this, but I put in a lot of hours playing. And I just have a delight working with people in the trenches to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
So, long answer, but that gives you context.
No, I absolutely love the context. And like you said, it's the passion part of it that kind of gets to your purpose, your why. It helps you to stay motivated, constantly innovate, and just make sure that you're delivering something that really is meaningful to yourself. So I love that. But let's talk a little bit about private equity, since that's where you kind of were able to go in and cut your teeth and you have a tremendous amount of experience. So, I've worked with some private equity firms to help them with their brand architecture, right? Meaning, a holding company came in, they bought a bunch of mom and pop shops within a specific industry. And as they're trying to consolidate them, roll them up to get to a place where it has more value and they can sell it, one of the key aspects they needed to look at was branding. Which brands do we have? Which ones have equity in the marketplace, whether it's local or national or international? But let's look at all those brands and see which ones we want to keep and which ones we can successfully put to rest to save money. So, but I wanted to ask you, do you have any stories or how often do you come across that? And then what's the role of the brand in helping to accelerate that growth?
Let's start by defining private equity
Okay.
because it's almost like saying car,
Hmm.
small car, big car,
Yep.
uh, practical car, luxury car, truck, passenger vehicle. So my comments, and it may be useful for your listeners, my comments are rooted in what I call lower middle market private equity.
Okay.
And for those Major League Baseball fans, it's sort of like the AAA farm club for the show, the major
Okay.
leagues. And that's a compliment. That's not a critique. That's a compliment, but I'll have to explain myself. Uh, Lower middle market, and by the way, it's not an officially defined term. And sales volume doesn't mean anything to private equity investors. It's
Okay.
EBITDA, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, is cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because it determines your capital structure for how you finance and invest in a business. So that's another story. But in the lower middle market, and the value of private equity firms to the big wheel turning is it should be appreciated more than it's castigated. There are a lot of people writing about it who've never been in it, have never made a payroll, and I challenge their perspective on this
Okay.
because if you haven't been there in it, you have no clue. But here's what they do. First of all, they're backed by big time investors.
Mm-hmm.
And most of us have family members that really, really want these people to do well. And I'll explain why.
Okay.
Because a large portion of their capital in their fund, the firms are general partners typically in a fund. Well, where's the fund come from? Pension plans
Mm-hmm.
and other things like that. So, one of the biggest investors is CalPERS in California.
Hmm.
That's pension money. So they should want these people to do well. And the lower middle market is constantly looking for smaller businesses. So let's say that in the lower middle market, an initial size company has at least 5 million in EBITDA and say 5 to 15 is that range. You'll get
Okay.
different answers on all this, but you get sort of the idea about relevance.
Yep.
But they see latent potential, latent potential.
Yeah.
And what they bring to the table is not only capital, but ideas.
Yeah.
So these things can evolve tremendously. So the types of firms I see are there looking for these companies that have proven value propositions,
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily have branding, but proven value propositions, repeat business, a growth trajectory, but inevitably they can experience growing pains in many manifestations. And I'll mention a few.
All right.
They may have an opportunity to leapfrog by acquiring something in another geography.
Okay.
Okay. That calls into focus at least two big things. Where's the money coming from?
Mm.
And have we ever done an integration before? And it's a skill set that it's one of the more complex project management examples I could possibly cite.
Okay.
The other one would be migrating to an ERP system if you really had only bits and pieces and mostly running it off of Excel.
Yeah.
So this is a big deal. So when they find these companies, they have what's called an investment thesis for that industry vertical. So they know why it's a good industry vertical. And you tend to specialize these days in industry verticals because there's so much risk involved. You have to be a specialist.
Okay.
And they bring that wisdom to the table. And they bring some things to ask, have you thought about type questions?
Right.
So it could be systems, it could be risk management, it could be growth capital, it could be investment banking type services, the M&A. And by the way, some of these founders may be thinking about retirement someday. This
Sure.
is a succession thing.
Sure.
So they have experience in that. And they also can call attention to some types of leadership skills that they haven't grown into yet. That it could be that they need to really beef up the accounting piece.
Okay.
And accounting, that's a mouthful because cost accounting on the floor, financial reporting, sometimes you go from cash to accrual. You may be looking at your first audit because the bigger you get, the more important it is to audit your books.
Sure.
So, and do we need, sometimes the terms marketing and sales are used as synonyms. That's not the case.
No.
So you may have one, but not the other, depending on the business model. Do you need both? Do you need a different type of human asset management expertise?
Okay.
There are a lot of things a small company pinch hits on and multitask because you can't afford Pharaoh's army.
Right.
Well, at some point, it's big enough that it needs a leader for that specialty. And HR is a good example of this, is you may have a generalist, but at some point you need a pretty high caliber, because if nothing else, when you cross a certain threshold of number of employees, you're in a much different environment for law, regs, and visitors.
True.
Safety can be another one. So it's literally all over the board. I could talk all day about it, and I know you do that, but the point is, these professional investors bring something to the table that helps both parties. Actually, it's more than two parties realize a vision.
Yes.
That the smaller company can grow more dramatically. And more reasonably by not necessarily encountering risks they didn't hear of, because that's what the investors bring to the table.
Sure.
And the private equity firm is representing people who need to see a return on investment. So it is a nice blend. It is a virtuous endeavor. And look, let's cut to the chase here. If a private equity firm expresses interest in your company, it is a supreme compliment, because they're acknowledging that you have built something and they think it has potential
to continue. Yes.
That's sort of like your favorite coach showing up to high school and say, here's a scholarship. Why don't you come play for us?
Right.
It's highly analogous.
Yeah. No, I love
Hope
that.
I answered your question.
I love that breakdown. No, but I would ask and say, and you made me think of two different things. So you decide which one you want to answer. But number one is, you defended private equity. So then that's a question of, does private equity have a brand, so to speak, that maybe needs a little help or enhancement? But on the other side, I would looking at it as you're coming, the private equity firms are coming in, and the consulting team they bring with them to provide expertise and systems and all that to these companies that they're investing in. But does brand ever get brought up in that conversation? And if it does, and if you see a private equity firm helping these companies improve their brand, what does it do to their valuation?
Sure. By the way, private equity, they're grown-ups. They can help themselves. And sometimes, maybe in some cases, I'm a bigger advocate for them than they would be for themselves, because it hasn't slowed them down, and they're virtuous from the standpoint of it's wiser not to react to it. Things will take care of themselves. And, there's a lot of merit to that argument. So in the lower middle market, I think you've posited a really good question for that end of private equity. In that a lot of investors like fragmented markets. And, that one of the behemoth consulting shops, and I don't want to mention the name. I think it is, because I may attribute it to the wrong one, and then I have unintentionally disrespected somebody. But they defined what a stable market is. That there's one player that has at least half the business. There's another big player that may have, or two that may have a chunk, but the overwhelming majority of a stable market is dominated by, say, three big players, and then everybody else is fighting for scraps. And one of the things that appeals to lower middle market investors is, if you're in a fragmented market, boy, do you ever have roll up possibilities.
Hmm.
And it's an opportunity with an asterisk. And
Okay.
that asterisk is okay, has the existing team ever done an integration? And if the answer is no, then that's something the professional investor would bring to the table. So this is not a part-time thing.
Yeah.
It needs immediate attention because you need to do it wisely and quickly, and it's a specialized skill set. We can help you with that.
Okay.
And it's one of those things. There's a term called platform, which is the foundation upon which you want to roll up these acquisitions and defragment a market.
Right.
And your ability to do acquisition integration as a core competency is a big deal. And the better you are, the faster you can go. And it
Yeah.
happens to be one of the things I do.
Okay.
I can take people who have aptitude and attitude, but no experience, and I can coach them from being neophytes to practitioners. And it's a big deal. So that's a fragmented market and why it's a good thing. Two, branding. Invariably, inevitably, but here's this like I think Robert Frost, The Road Less Taken.
Yeah.
You do have two definite forks in the road.
Okay.
Depending on what it is, it may be wise to have a brand
Hmm.
for obvious reasons, a brand.
Yeah.
But sometimes the more localized the target market is for something you're acquiring, and let's use the trades for an example.
Yep.
Heating and air conditioning, HVAC,
Yep.
electricians, plumbers, roofers. There's an argument that if somebody has been there forever
Yeah.
and everybody knows, it's sort of like Better Call Saul.
Right.
If everybody knows, why would you mess with that?
Yeah.
And you don't have to. And then that's what you might call a parent-child architecture.
Yep.
Well, it works.
Yep.
So your trade-off is cost benefit about, does this help our brand image
Hmm.
and going to market because we want to play organically too?
Right.
Or does it hurt? And this isn't an ego thing. This is a customer is boss. And how does customer react to this thing?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. What you're talking about is where is the equity in the brand, right? And
Exactly.
if you, private equity or anyone comes in and buys a company or acquires a firm that has very, very strong brand equity, like you're talking about, especially locally, why, like you said, why would you mess with that? Because the minute you change the name, you've signaled that this relationship or this part of the relationship I have with the company has ended and something new is starting. And why
Yep.
would you want that? So, yeah, your parent child, or even the house of brands strategy, which is there's a holding company, but then we have all these great brands underneath the umbrella. Yeah, if there is equity there and people have a relationship with a firm, whether it's a local trade, as you said, or even maybe it's a consumer product, a small, tiny consumer product that does well in a small market, people don't want you to mess with that name, and you lose value if you do. So,
I'm going to date myself a little bit here. This example is at least 30 years old, but it proves a good point.
yeah.
And one of the many industries that I have experience in is home furnishings.
Okay.
And I was made aware of this survey, it's a market survey about brand recognition. And this particular Midwestern company
Yeah.
had been out of business for years, and yet it was still among the top brands recognized for home furnishings. That's brand equity.
That is
So,
absolutely brand equity.
and think about the terms that we've coined
Yes.
in just the English language, and that they haven't been around forever and ever and ever, but you still, it means something.
It means something.
Like
Yeah.
I grew up on a Kmart Blue Light Special.
Yes.
I know what that means, but you can't find one.
Right. Exactly. I just read that I think they closed the very last Kmart recently. And then, yeah, that is absolutely closing the book on a retail chapter that will probably never be replicated, or at least, not to that extent. So, but yeah, that's great. So Well, this is fascinating when you talk about these, the brand and, do you touch it? Do you not touch it? Especially when you're trying to, as you said, aggregate or integrate companies within a fragmented market. But let's talk a little bit about um, employer branding, because you and I talked about this when we met the first time, which was, especially in this middle market or even smaller than the lower middle market, once people are scaling and really trying to go after some accelerated growth trajectories, they're going to need people. They're going to have to tell the story of why should someone come and work here. And, that is something that I work with my clients on is, if you can't get people to work for you, how are you going to get people to work with you? Meaning customers and things like that. But you shared a story about an urgent care facility that just nailed their brand and their purpose. And I would love for you to share that with the listeners here.
Sure. There's a particular deliverable. It's one of my big four
Okay.
that is called the value creation roadmap. And it is done right after the private equity investor and the portfolio company have consummated the transaction. So they're family now.
Yeah.
So before that, it's diligence, close it. Now we're partners.
Okay.
Let's go. And one of the things we do is this planning session to make sure people are aligned on the same priorities because it governs where resources should be prioritized and why. And we did this. This is something I learned 25 years ago as a Six Sigma nerd, is there's a conventional wisdom answer for something, but it might not be the answer. And I got curious about a few things and I realized, no diligence is perfect.
Yeah.
So what do we miss?
Yeah.
And when you get the right people in the room, and to me, that means the operators
Yeah.
of the various functions that comprise the business model, some of which literally may not have been exposed to the diligence process,
Mm-hmm.
and they might not even know what private equity is. So you have to get that on the table too.
Sure.
So you have what's commonly called the deal team from the private equity firm, and you have the leadership team from the portfolio company, and you review the investment thesis, and you share what you found in diligence, and you offer an idea, and then you get their feedback. And look, I can tell you, in 200 companies, the perspectives have never been identical. Oh my God. No, that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
What it is. And when you get all that on the table, there's a change management phenomenon going on here. In that participation is great.
Yeah.
Inclusion in something that they had their fingerprints on is better. And I'd forget who to ascribe this to whom attribution is warranted, but there's a general, it might have been Patton, he said something to the effect of, I'd rather have a so-so plan violently executed than a great plan implemented next week. So if you could get people aligned and motivated, yeah. Okay, we're all on the same team. Let's call this play.
Yep.
So you get that on the table there. So now for downstream stuff. And so in case we lost our visitors, repackage your question, but context was necessary.
Yeah, no, you had brought up the story to me about getting everyone engaged in the purpose of the organization, the brand, the promise, right. The purpose. And you shared this urgent care center story with me that I thought was fantastic. Okay. And just wanted to make sure you shared that. So
that's the foundation for how this happened.
Mm-hmm.
So we talk about institutionalizing culture.
Yep.
As a management tool. And we talk about the revenue streams and we talk about operations. And when it comes to branding, I'd rather be the brand than have one.
Explain that.
And ideally, one describes the other.
Okay.
But sometimes I'd rather be the brand. We call that the purpose statement. This is why we come to work. Well, when we were having this discussion with this particular company, and it was truly a magical event, is this we try to get to something that is very concise and pithy for retention purposes, because you want people to do this for their reasons. And these three words came up: great care,
Mm.
period, fast, exclamation point.
Mm.
There were maybe 24 people in the room. And I grew up Protestant in the South. I haven't seen anything quite like that since I went to a revival.
Oh,
You could see it in their eyes. You could literally see it in
everyone
their eyes.
believed.
It was truly you could see twinkle in the eyes. People look
Yeah.
around, they start nodding, say, "That's it.
Yeah.
That's it." Well, it happened to start as a purpose statement, but it became the brand, the marketing tagline. It
Yeah.
was the brand equity. It was the value proposition. It was the purpose statement. It just coalesced.
Right.
And the CEO said, that's going on the wall in every lobby. And it did.
And it did.
And the performance of this team was simply spectacular. At the time we did that, they were only growing organically.
Mm.
And they kept that up at a frenetic pace. They
Okay.
were that good at it, but they also became acquisitive. And uh, their growth was off the scale big. The value they created off the scale big. What was the rallying point? The brand.
Yeah.
So you knew the company's name, but what customers wanted was that value proposition. So it was arguably, which one's the brand?
Mm.
Because the one I know, oh, that's the name of the company, but this is where I can get what I want. I want
This is
great care
where, yeah,
fast.
this is where the meaning is. Yep.
Yeah. So it's one of my favorite stories
Yeah.
in that sometimes you can have a list of six things, but if you had something that covers the bases on at least four of them, that's a big win.
That is a huge win. That is a
That's a
huge
big
win.
win.
Yeah. No, and I love what you're talking about. It's, you got the buy-in internally and then it transferred externally as the meaning. But, I love that because people often forget, especially in service companies, your employees are your brand ambassadors. They're the ones who have the opportunity to make or break your brand promise anytime they interact with, whether it's a patient, a customer, however you do that. And if they can all buy in and be excited about what they're going to deliver, and everybody's saying the same thing internally and externally, man, the power of that brand awareness and that brand equity just explodes. And as you said, that turns into growth. So,
You opened a door that very few people who interview me open.
uh-oh.
And I want to honor it and I want to answer it
Okay.
because you associated this with how does it appeal to potential talent to help grow this business?
Mhm.
And it happens to be one of my personal passions
Okay.
because of the four things that define most of what I do: the inspired teams piece,
Yep.
um, talent. It is a big deal. And believe it or not, I coach my clients to think of it using marketing principles.
Okay.
So we start with end game. What do you really want to be? And in practical terms, I think you want to be the employer of choice. There is a war for talent.
Oh yeah.
There is a war for talent right now. By the way, it's not going away.
No.
And in my lifetime, I can distinctly remember my dad saying, in his own and inimitable way, uh, he's a greatest generation guy. He's been taking his dirt nap for a few years now.
Oh.
But he basically said, John, anybody who changes careers more than once is a loser.
Wow.
And the company he thought ought to go work for doesn't exist anymore. So
Yes.
compare that to now, where we literally have a mercenary workforce, highly mobile, highly mobile. And you look at anybody's LinkedIn profile, and as I often do, anything beyond about a 4-year stint is odd by comparison these days.
Rare. Yeah.
So, how do you attract people? And if you take those marketing principles and you say you want to be the employer of choice, here are the things that we do relative to the brand. And this is another reason, going back to the example we shared about Great Care Fast,
Yeah.
is that it's institutionalized in their culture, and culture is part of what you're trying to figure out if this candidate fits.
Yes.
And we're
Yes.
not talking clones, we're talking compatibility. Do
Yes.
our values overlap nicely enough that it's accretive and not conflict?
Mm-hmm.
Um, do they believe in great care fast? Well, they did in their interview process.
Yeah.
Um, and so, what are you looking for? Is a unique value proposition for an individual, if you think
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Right.
And that's a job description. And one of the many things that I've learned is that the job descriptions used to post
Mm.
do not sufficiently reflect, I'm being kind here, do not sufficiently reflect what the job is because the people who do the work were not asked.
Yeah,
So we fix them.
exactly. Exactly.
So then we ask, where do people like this hang out?
Mm-hmm.
That's a marketing channel. How do we reach that? That's a channel strategy. And you get some platforms that can help you with this, but
Sure.
one is a recruiter.
Yeah.
That tends to be a little bit higher up the food chain of seniority because you're paying a recruiter fee.
Right.
Um, and um, the performance management thing, you should understand that if you don't promote culture, you're becoming the UN of an employer because there is no common theme,
Right. Right.
and it's too disparate.
Yeah.
And there's some things you don't mix, like oil and water. Uh,
Yeah.
so why would the devout vegetarian work at a meat processing plant or vice versa? That just
Right.
that's what I mean by oil and water. That doesn't seem like that mixes. But there's a final thing here on marketing that some of the best CEOs that I've ever worked with, and some of them I've interviewed for this book, and thanks again for the plug on that, is they believe in something I call proactive recruiting.
Yeah.
And it basically means you're flooding the market with a message,
Yeah.
marketing
Yep.
channel, strategy, Marcom, marketing communications,
Right.
to make people aware of you.
Yes.
And it's rooted in a principle. The worst time in the world to try to fill a position is when it's vacant because
Yes.
you're under tremendous pressure to settle, and your privilege for that tends to be doing it at least once more
Yeah.
because you went for fogging a mirror as opposed to fitting a position.
Exactly.
So this particular people said something to the effect, when I encounter people I think have it, here's my card, call me.
Yeah.
So I'm not looking. You may
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
your friend may be.
Exactly.
And so their critics, they had some interesting responses for that. Wait a minute, you don't have the budget for an extra head. He said, I got two answers. One, there's
Yeah.
always a project to do, and I put them to doing something, and I figure out where their best fit is. And he
Okay.
said, the people who criticize me, and this can get back to my journalism problem,
Yeah.
is he said, people assume that everybody is performing, and they're not.
Right.
So there's a small fraction, thankfully. We have very little turnover, but it's because I do it this way. And he said, if that best fit is in an area where I've got a non performer, that's called top grading.
Yeah.
I don't miss a lick. So he had a model, and it was all rooted in marketing principles.
Right.
We wanted to be the employer of choice. We used our brand. We explained what we do for a living. And all these techniques, whether it's a unique value proposition or brand equity, you got to be careful sometimes about fancy MBA words,
You're right.
but this is why we come to work.
Yeah. You're
This is
why.
what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be a part of that, talk to anybody here. We also have fun doing what we do.
Yeah.
And if you don't like where you are and you think you want to explore your options, talk to us. So it's basic. I guess that's one of the most fulfilling things I've done in what I do for a living
Yeah.
is helping people realize the techniques that have already been proved. I said, look, you buy brands today. Why
Yeah.
don't you become one? And
Yeah.
let's apply it to the talent pipeline management piece. And it's anchored in your performance management. It's, meritocracy. You want an
Mm-hmm.
opportunity to prove how good you are?
Yeah.
Here we are.
Here you are.
Here
Yeah.
we are.
Yeah.
So I love stuff like that. I love
Yeah.
helping people figure it out. One of the, this is going to sound almost like I'm a sadomasochist, but I love it when people call me and say, I got a problem with high turnover.
Ah.
And I
Mm-hmm.
just told you how I go about it. And it
Yeah.
always dramatically improves, which sounds hyperbolic, but it isn't.
Yeah.
Everything can be improved. Excellence never rests.
Yep.
It has to always improves.
Yeah.
One of the easiest places to do this, and a lot of people are really upset about how tough it is to find talent these days.
Yeah.
They need to lean on some marketing principles to make it easier.
That's exactly right. I mean, that's when I get called in to help my clients, and they're a little bit smaller than where you're playing with the lower middle market. But yeah, the same thing is they come in, they say, I could grow if I had more people, but I can't attract more people. And then I'll ask them, okay, well, what are you telling them? Why are you telling top talent that you think you need to grow? Why should they come and work for you? Have you identified your core values? Have you identified what your culture is? Have you identified the vision of where you're going? All of that comes together into the employer brand that helps you stand out in your industry to attract the right people who are going to help you grow. So I think this is fabulous. And yes, I love talking to you about the methodology and the passion you have for helping these companies grow. So this, unfortunately, we've used up our time, but I might have you back, John, because I think there's a lot of things we haven't explored yet, and we could certainly do that in another podcast. But no, I want to say thank you so much for being on the show today. I have greatly appreciated this conversation. It's a lot of fun, and I love your stories. I just want to say, if people want to work with you or book you to speak or grab a copy of your books, how can they find you?
The easiest way to find me is on our website. And
Yeah.
speaking of branding, there's a parent child thing going on, and middlemarketmethods.com is the parent.
Okay.
And I'll leave it to your imagination what the child might be, but it
Yeah.
has something to do with something we've talked about. How's that for a tease? Uh,
Oh,
I'm also active on LinkedIn.
okay.
If in reaching out by either vehicle, there are ways to reach me through either platform. If you want to be on I write a quarterly article on value creation that's representative of things I encounter and ask people to, it reflects things I frankly think they ought to be thinking about if they haven't.
Okay.
Uh, so, the relative to the speaking and the consulting piece, I write a lot of stuff. All my articles are posted on the website. But I just, first of all, I love this stuff. I
Yeah.
guess that should come across. And
Yes.
truly, my passion is the David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
I admire so much these founder owners
Mm-hmm.
that defied gravity, and they
Yep.
didn't know it couldn't be done, and they built great businesses, and it still has a lot of potential. Maybe sometimes they know it and they deliberately want to partner.
Yeah.
Sometimes they don't know it, and oh wow, look who just called me. But
Yeah.
it's a win. It's a testament to their stewardship
Yep.
of a value proposition,
Yeah.
that they live it. It's palpable. Their markets respect them, and the ability to grow it. And there's a legacy implication there too. I just love this stuff.
Yeah.
I'm I am both an early bird and a night owl because I'm having fun. Keep in
You're
mind,
having fun.
I haven't
Yeah.
worked since 2006,
Yeah.
but I have fun at least 16 hours a day most days.
That's excellent. That's excellent. That's all you could ask for. But yeah, I'm the same way. I am absolutely passionate about it. And one of my favorite things to do is after I've done my branding engagement for a founder or, CEO of an organization is to help them fall in love with their business again. Because I focus on what are you great at? What's your why? Why did you get into this business? Why would someone want to work with you? And yeah, to be able to bring that kind of joy and energy to a leadership team of a company that's growing, it makes me so excited and happy. So,
I'm one of them. I'm a hands dirty kind of guy. Nothing tickles me more than to work with people doing the work
yes, yes,
and respect them by asking, what's wrong here? What do you
Yeah.
think is causing this?
Yeah.
What keeps you up at night? And say, okay. Sometimes they haven't been asked.
Yeah.
And so that respect goes a long way. And the other thing is, you say, okay, since you know what's wrong, got any ideas about how to fix it?
Yeah. Right.
And the solutions, to the extent they have any influence of that. Sometimes I bring stuff to the table. Have you thought about this? If you thought, oh no, that's okay. But to the extent that you honor and respect their experience, by the
Yeah.
way, that's a customer phenomenon too. If you think about
Sure.
it, we're talking about marketing, and they put their fingerprints on the solution. You get automatic protagonists, change agency.
Yeah.
That if they're part of the authored solution, they're not likely to subvert their own work. It is just horse sense. It makes so much practical sense. You don't have to fancy this up.
Yeah.
And it applies to branding. It applies to everything. How you get your revenue, how you produce your product, how you treat and attract good talent. And it's all focused on the boss. And
Yeah.
the boss is where we started. It's the customer.
Yeah. Yeah.
You remember the James Carville line that was so funny? Is the economy stupid, when he was managing a presidential campaign? Well, every day I remind myself, it's the customer, stupid.
It's the customer.
And stupid is me. It's the customer. And
Yes.
that customer can be on the payroll or working on behalf of the customer outside the business.
Yeah.
But it starts and ends customer, customer, customer. And if that's all we remember, that's a good guiding principle.
That is a great guiding principle, and I'm going to end it on that because it is a perfect closing statement. So I want to thank you, John, so much for being on the show today. I am honored to have you share your insights with me. It was wonderful. So thank you again.
This was more fun than a picnic. Thank you.
Awesome. I'm going to write that down. It's more fun than a picnic. But I'm just going to end here by saying thank you, everyone, for joining us for this episode of the Turbo Branding Show. I hope you've been inspired to ignite your growth by leveraging your brand. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could help me build the brand for the show by sharing the episode, and be sure to like, subscribe, and possibly leave a review. And if you or someone you know would be a great guest for the show, an inspiring founder, CEO, or even an advisor, please let us know in the comments or connect with us via email. But thank you, and stay tuned for the next episode.